and Genesis chapter 6, 7, and 8. The story of Noah in Genesis 6, 7, and 8, Lot in Genesis 18, 19. If we want to look carefully at the word studies in the Hebrew language, at the statements that are made in the narrative itself, of the numbers that are mentioned, in fact, many, many numbers are mentioned in the story of the flood of Noah, then we will have clues that will reveal to us parallel events that are going to happen prior to the return of the Messiah. How does a tsunami fit into the story of the days of Lot and Noah? Well, it doesn't fit into the days of Lot whatsoever, because in the days of Lot, brimstone fell. It was possibly a volcanic eruption that decimated the entire 4 of the 5 cities of the plain south of the Dead Sea. In the story of Noah, however, water is involved, and water is involved coming from 2 directions. Genesis chapter 7 and verse 11 tells us that when the moment of the flood came, the fountains of the deep were opened. The fountains of the deep were opened. Now, for them to be opened, there had to be a cracking of the earth, and it's very possible there were massive earthquakes that came the moment that the flood was coming. And what happened is the fountains, I looked up the Hebrew word fountains, and it can mean a well, deep water wells. It can also refer to the word that we use today as an aquifer, which is where the water table is underneath the crust of the earth at different levels.
So the purpose of a water pump going out is because, well, for one, the car was 14 years old. It was a 14-year-old Lexus, 2010 to 2024. Here we are. It's been to Vegas, and now it's been to Pennsylvania, and it's from Texas. So what's the purpose of a water pump when it goes out? Well, I would say it's probably because it's old and material things usually don't last forever. And however, there could be supernatural things that last forever. For instance, if you take care of your car. Well, I'm the second owner, so I don't know how it was taken care of, but it did drive me to Vegas and back to Texas, and now it's driven me to Colorado and back to Texas, and then it drove me to, here I am, Montgomeryville, and it drove me just fine until I got to Lancaster, and then the water pump broke. What does that mean? Well, it means, this is prophetically speaking, why would my water pump break in Lancaster when the devil sent a storm and it blew everywhere? Well, it means, what's the purpose of a water pump? To continually circulate coolant from the radiator to the vehicle engine block to prevent what? Well, do you see that sun out there? You need a little water. You see, you need a little water in the engines, in your bodies, in your vessels. For instance, if I drink too much coffee in the water, I'm probably going to have a headache. But if I have a balance, I could drink 1 coffee and 1 water and be good, you see? And then I can come back later and drink another coffee and another water. That's balance. So, to prevent overheating, that's what a water pump's for. And when it goes out, that means things are too hot.
layers. So then we will have clues. Very possible there were massive earthquakes that came the moment that the flood was coming. And what happened is the fountains, I looked up the Hebrew word fountains, and it can mean a well, deep water wells. It can also refer to the word that we use today as an aquifer, which is where the water table is underneath the crust of the earth at different layers. So what happens is it begins to break apart, and that water just comes out from underneath the ground. And then it says that the windows of heaven were open, and that is a phrase in the Hebrew for a great deluge of water coming in the form of rain. So rain is coming from above and from beneath. Now, how I interpret that, there was rain in the heaven. I interpret that as the hurricanes that come off the coast of Pacific Ocean, Atlantic Ocean, wherever it might be, and they come inland and they dump a lot of rain and water on the population centers. Then I picture the tsunami as being the imagery in Genesis 7:11 of how the fountains of the deep were broken up and that water came out. So we're going to have, in the time of the end, extreme weather patterns. Now, some would call it climate change, some would refer to it as global warming, but it is simply birth pains of the heavens and birth pains on the earth according to Scripture. Birth pains of the Messiah is how some of the rabbinical sources would interpret it. Now, here's what I want to show you. In the New Testament, Luke 21:25, there will be signs in the sun, the moon, the stars upon the earth, the stress of nation with perplexity, the sea and the waves roaring. The idea of the sea, the oceans, and the waves roaring, what does that mean? Well, you look up the word roaring, and it comes from the Greek word an echo sound. So there is an echo sound